Okay, so the presentation today is How to Succeed in College Writing, Tips for Documenting Sources. Our presenter today is Dr. Miriam Russell. And what we're going to do first is we're going to show you a video, as I mentioned earlier. So give me a moment and we will bring this up. Oops, my apologies. Hold on a second here. It's a little quirky. My apologies. All right, let me open this and we'll be bringing this up momentarily. Thank you.
Hey, wait a minute. You're taking my information and using it without using my name. That's not right. What do you mean? My words aren't exactly the same as yours. That doesn't matter. The ideas are the same, and the way you're saying the ideas. But I thought that was okay. No, it's not. It's like taking something that belongs to someone else without that person's permission. You've got to use my name to show the source of your ideas. So, if I said, Marika says that many people use Google to research information, but not too many evaluate the websites they find, is that okay? Yes, the name is part of what you need when you use someone else's words or ideas. Here's a good way to remember, and I'm quoting from a question on a quiz from Hamilton College. Here's the question. When is it okay to use another person's information without giving that person's name? Here are the possible answers. Choose one. A, never. B, never. C, never. Or D, all of the above. Okay, I get it. So each and every time I use the ideas or words of someone else, I must say where it's from, which is citing the source. For more information on citing sources, go to the Empire State College Library website.
Thank you very much, Terry. We really appreciate your efforts in bringing that video as an introduction to the subject at hand. I'm very happy that you're here to spend part of your noon hour with us to talk about how to succeed in college writing, in particular documenting sources and academic integrity. I think the video gave you some idea of the overview about academic integrity. I'm a faculty mentor and writing coach here at CDL and have been an adjunct teaching writing courses for over a dozen years and working online. So we have some approaches that we think you might find useful, and we'll go ahead with this agenda. We're going to further discuss academic integrity, then we're going to review that academic integrity quiz, and then we're going to choose sources that pass the CRAAP test. So later on we'll be more specific about documenting sources, examples of MLA and APA, and we'll give you more resources and then a question and answer session. So please, as we're going through here, be looking, some of this is going to be review for you. If you've been in my writing courses before, it's definitely going to be review. So there's some things that you know. Everybody may be on a different level in terms of their understanding and of their mastery of documentation. So as you go through, as I say, if it's review, fine, but if there are any aha moments, please share them with us at the end. So as we go through this agenda, we'll be seeing if we can come up with new information for you. But let's review the academic integrity quiz. Now, can we do it this way? If you believe that the answer, that the example given is a breach of academic integrity, I'd like you to respond by going up to the happy face and pulling down that menu and showing a thumbs down, a disapproval. Okay, do that. Can we show? Yes, okay. So you're going to find a thumbs down if the example is a breach of academic integrity. If it is not, show the approval thumbs up, okay? So if that's all right and everybody sees how to do that, let's see a thumbs up from everyone. Thank you. Very good. For number 1, is this a breach of academic integrity to submit a paper you wrote for a previous course? Now that you've reviewed the quiz, you will say, thank you, Bonnie. Did anybody else decide whether it's a thumbs up or a thumbs down? A thumbs down is yes, it's a breach. Yes, it's a no-no. All right. Yes, these professors assume your work is original to their course, and unless you specifically cite the prior work, if you want to build on prior work, you discuss this with your professor prior to submitting your paper. So he or she knows which work has been done specifically for the current course you are taking. So now let's consider question number 2. Eliminating survey responses because they do not support your hypothesis. Is this a breach of academic integrity? If so, give us a thumbs down. If not, thumbs up. We have 1 thumbs down. Okay. If you're not sure, thank you, folks. If you're not sure, it is a yes. This is a breach. It's a thumbs down. By eliminating data, you are making a dishonest and false statement. Most subject fields have guidelines for appropriate methods of data collection, as well as other recommended practices. So speak with your mentor or tutor to learn more about these sources in your area of study. You can start out with one hypothesis, and if you find material that disagrees with your hypothesis, you need to deal with it. You need to see, how valid it is, and you need to find a way to present it along with the material that does agree with your hypothesis. Now, number 3, the question number 3. If you split the problems with a friend or classmate and then turn in the answers separately, this is a breach of academic integrity. If you think so, put a thumbs down. Going up to this happy face and pulling down the menu, and thank you. We can reassure you that yes, this is cheating. Both you and your friend are guilty of misrepresenting the work of another person as your own. So now, number 4. Allowing a friend to copy a paper you wrote for a course last year. Is that a breach? All right, everyone agrees that that's a thumbs down. Yes, you facilitated an act of academic dishonesty. Now, question number 5. Paraphrasing from an article Is this a breach of academic integrity? If so, thumbs down. If not, thumbs up. All right. And we have responses with thumbs up because, yes, of course, paraphrasing the content of an article is acceptable. However, you are guilty of plagiarism if you do not properly acknowledge the source of the information. And whether you choose to paraphrase or quote the source directly, you must include a reference to the author within the text of the paper or with a footnote. Now, let's review a little bit more about why we document sources. There's a quote from the ESC library website. When you're writing a research paper, it blends your ideas with ideas and information from other sources. Documentation shows the reader what ideas are yours and what information and ideas you've taken from another source to support your point of view. And there is the link to where I got this information. Do you notice I put the information in quotes, and I introduced that quotation. Often, in addition, an article or text chapter will provide additional sources of information for those who want to know more about their topic. So that's another function of documenting your sources. So on the next slide here, what is documenting a source? I think you're getting the message pretty much that documentation is simply the process of identifying the sources and facts that you've obtained from someone else, and you're giving credit to the sources. Also, it gives your own work weight and authority. When we see evidences of breaches of academic integrity, it's because sometimes students forget to document or are unaware of the proper format. And we refer to this as inadvertent plagiarism. And often we'll merely ask for a revision, and then we use the correct documentation in the revision. So if an instructor finds inadvertent plagiarism, they may allow students to do the paper over again, and the grade may be changed. It's important to have a dialogue with the instructor if this happens to you. Now, where does documentation appear? Two places. One in the text, and two listed at the end of the paper. The source at the end of the paper in MLA is called Works Cited, and in APA it's called References. But before you put the source in your paper, let's consider what sources you will be collecting. On the next slide. We're suggesting that you use the CRAAP test to select and evaluate the credibility of your sources. C meaning, is it current, is it timely? Because some instructors expect you to be using only sources from the last 10 years. It depends. If you're taking a history course, that may not be so. So make sure you know if there is any stipulation about the currency. The next one, the R, is the relevancy. Does it relate to your needs? Are you going to use this in terms of your topic? And does it relate to your thesis? Or does it have, does it have additional information for you to use? Authority is very important too. Who is the author and publisher? You really want authorities who have been published in reliable sources. Accuracy is important, of course. Is it reliable? Is it truthful? Is it correct? And the purpose, why does the information exist? There are different reasons for people to publish sources in print or electronically. Everybody knows that electronic sources from the internet are something you need to scrutinize very carefully. So this CRAAP test, testing the credibility of your sources, I'm documenting here at the bottom. It comes from the library at the California State University, and it's something important to keep in mind when you're surveying the material to write about it. What do you do with the sources you find? Well, once you've selected them and they're credible and they've passed that CRAAP test, you read through the sources selectively to identify material that's relevant to your topic. Hopefully, if you've printed it out, you've got your pencil in hand, and if it's electronically available to you, you can very often highlight or annotate on that electronic copy. This is something else to note. Look at the titles, the headings, the index, and the abstraction and the conclusion to see how it relates to your topic. You may want to choose articles or book chapters, and if you look through, look for key ideas that you can use. Next slide, please. This is an example of a text with material from a source, and some that is original with the author, and some that is from a source. Now, as I read this passage, I'm going to stop at the end of each sentence so you can decide if that information in the sentence is common knowledge or not. Would you please use thumbs up for yes, it's common knowledge, and thumbs down for no, for documentation needed? No, I guess we better do that opposite. Let's put a thumbs down for common knowledge and a thumbs up for documentation needed, so that I'll be able to see your responses. Let's go ahead right away with sentence number 1. Women nurses for the first time began to staff the Army hospitals. Is this common knowledge? Is this common knowledge that women nurses I think that people, if you know anything about Army hospitals, if you know anything about the first nurses, you will know that women were involved. So we're going to let that go. Sentence number 2, Dorothea Dix was appointed superintendent of women nurses for the U.S. Army. Responses on that? Public knowledge, right. Now the third sentence. She barred any applicant she thought interested only in romantic adventure. You think that was from another source? Thumbs up if you think it is from a source. Yes, that would need to be documented. What about the next sentence? She required the nurses to be plain-looking women and at least 30 years old. Is that common knowledge? Yes. Well, it should be documented because, frankly, I didn't know that. And the next sentence, number 5, they were to wear brown or black dresses, and no bows, curls, jewelry, or hoop skirts were allowed. Is that common knowledge? No, that needs to be documented. You have to prove that what was expected of them in terms of clothing. Number 6. Nursing became a respectable way for energetic women to be useful in a time of crisis and to escape the restrictive environment of their homes and their predictable lives. And this sentence, is it common knowledge? Well, my sources say that it is. It's not. You don't need to document that. How about number 7? Women were permitted to become nurses simply because nursing was an extension of the mothering role for which they were believed to be uniquely fitted. Do you need to document that? Actually, this is considered common knowledge. Number 8, some 3,000 women on both sides of the Civil War served as nurses. Most without training or skills, since the main prerequisite for Civil War nursing was a capacity for self-sacrifice and solitude. Now, that's easy to analyze as needing documentation, because there's a specific number involved there that you have to indicate where you got that number. So that would be documented. And number 9, much of their time was spent as housekeepers, for they were often expected to cook, clean, and do laundry for the patients. There must be a source for such specific information. So that needs to be documented. And number 10, many nurses work without pay. And that needs to be documented as well. Now the question is, what do you do if all of this information is taken from one source? Let's go ahead to the next slide to see where you put in-text citations. Sources are cited in the text and listed at the end. Here are 3 types of in-text citations. First, a direct quote. Smith said, notice the comma, to introduce the quote. All direct quotes must be introduced, either at the beginning, even in the middle, or at the end. But they must be connected to your text, using quotation marks for exact copying, word for word, and the page number where those word for word can be found. Notice the period at the end of the parentheses. But if you will be paraphrasing the observation or the information, you need to also include the author's name. According to Smith, comma, and then here comes the paraphrase, the ocean water levels are rising at a faster rate. Notice how that is the same idea, but you're attributing to the author, but it's not word for word. Another way to cite information that you're paraphrasing is to put the author's name in parenthesis at the end. And here we have the paraphrase, the water levels of the tides are now rising at a faster rate than before. So where do we put the parenthesis? At the end. Do we put it after each paraphrase sentence or at the end of the paragraph? And if we go back to the slide before, I wish I could write on this, because I would show you that we would be citing that source at the end in a parenthesis, and it would be the author or the publisher. in the parentheses. So if you want to read more about these issues, you'll find it at this website, www.esc.edu/online-writing. So if all of the information that you use that needed to be sourced is in the in that particular paragraph, you use the one citation at the end of that paragraph. If you have two sources within the paragraph, you need to identify at the end of each source. So moving to the next slide. Here are some examples of citing sources at the end of the paper. If you're looking at a book and you're using MLA, you will be using the first example, and you'll be calling it works cited. If you're using APA, you'll be calling your list of sources references. Now look at what we have here. We have Ricci's name in each of the sources. It starts out with the last name of the author, but MLA does a comma and the author's first name. APA does a capital initial with a period, and then going up to the top, the title comes next in MLA, and the title, because it's a book, is italicized, and the title comes after the date for APA. I'm taking the time to show you all these differences because the differences are sometimes difficult if you're familiar with using APA and you're asked now to switch to MLA. Notice how the differences between how the publisher is listed. For MLA, it's Boston with a colon after it. And if it's APA, it's Boston, comma, with the state initials. The next slide, yes, shows you. Why are there different formats? Well, MLA is used by the humanities. MLA means Modern Language Association. So if you're doing a lit course or a writing course, you'll be using MLA. APA is a part of the American Psychological Association, and guess what? If you're studying psychology, you'll be using the APA. Chicago is often used by business and history. So you need to check with your instructor or see what instructions the instructor of a particular course is using. Sometimes it doesn't matter that they will approve of either one, but you need to find out. The standard for humanities courses is MLA, and the standard for psychology courses, education courses, is APA. Chicago business might use APA if the instructor approves. Chicago is pretty standard for business and history. So it depends. But generally, you go by MLA for humanities, APA for psychology, and Chicago for business and history. All right. Now, let's see our next slide. We've just answered this question, haven't we? What format should you use for what courses? Okay. Now, here is an example of citations at the end of the paper, which is an edited book. A book by an author and an editor. Starting off with the author's name, that's consistent. The last name of the author. And by the way, these sources, as you probably know, should be listed alphabetically, no numbers, just alphabetically. But MLA starts with the word Matthew, and APA uses the initial. Culture and Anarchy is a capitalized the second word, and for APA it's not. It's in italics. And the editor, this is one of the trickiest citations you can do. If you can master this, you're good. How does MLA include the editor in an edited book? It just, it depends. Whether you're using MLA, it's ED period, J period, and so forth. Again, note the difference in where APA and MLA uses the date. Now, before you start tearing out your hair, let's look at the next slide. This is good news for everybody. There are websites that will help you do this. If you have an electronic source or a lecture, a media, a video, a play, a radio, or TV program, this one of these web sources will help you and even provide the proper format for you. And this is the one that that's very handy. The Son of Citation Machine. You just Google it and you'll find it. And if you're using MLA, you want to click on that MLA word up in the top left-hand corner, and or APA. It's okay. It shows you the same thing. APA. Go over to the left and let's see. Are we looking at a book? Is your source an anthology? Is it a reference, an encyclopedia? All the way down to government publications if you're talking about legal issues. You can even cite conference proceedings. And then an interview that you had with an expert, a personally conducted interview. And suppose you have non-print sources, which many of us use exclusively now, an electronic version of a book, going all the way down to a produced video or a podcast. In another way of doing an interview. And if we could open up one of these, let's see which one. If somebody type what kind of a source they would like to look at. Non-print. All right, suggested here, an online journal article, which is most often used for research in college writing. Okay, so now all you have to do is get the correct information and put it in the windows, starting with the author's last name and his initials for MLA, and then the year published. Terry's doing a good job. Title of the article is Test of Website, and then you look to see what periodical it's in, and then if you have the volume, if you have the issue, if you have the page numbers, you put it in there. Then your digit object identifier, if you have that, but most often you will have the web address. Now, some instructors will ask you to include the web address in your citations. Then all you do is just merely make the citation. It does it for you. You notice how it's MLA. It puts the title properly, and it tells you when it was retrieved and what it was retrieved from. The second window is your in-text citation. For MLA, they use the date in turn, just the year. All right. So now, if you have another journal article citation, you will press this too. If we go back to this part, if you go way over on the right hand and you're wondering exactly how to fill out these windows, if you open up the help, each one of these items has an explanation for you. And, you know, I'm somewhat in awe of this because when I went through, we didn't have this, And we had to fuss about all of the punctuation and the italics and the underlining, and it was quite time consuming. So that's the Son of Citation Machine. There are other ones too. Has anybody used EndNotes? I think that goes along with the Microsoft Word. Well, if anyone is using EndNotes, that's fine too. However, I hope the next slide will show you one of our manuals in print. A used copy of this manual will cost less than $5. It's a worthwhile expenditure. The new edition is the 6th edition. This pictures the 5th edition, so you'll want to get the 6th edition. And this source is great to have if you want to have it at hand, in your hand, to look up all of the items and all of the extra information they have about proper ways of quoting, proper ways of introducing quotes, and even more information about punctuation and writing styles that you won't find on the internet. So everyone should have a manual. We're recommending this Pocket Style Manual by Diana Hacker. There's some other resources. Turnitin has been used most often by instructors who have a suspicion that a paper has been not properly documented. However, some instructors will ask the students to turn in their paper to Turnitin before they turn it in or submit it to the website or to the course. So I'm sure the instructor will let you know whether or not you need to turn in your paper to turn it in, and Turnitin will identify everything that is original and everything that has been taken from a source, so that sometimes if you can turn it in yourself, you can find out if you slipped up. Now, if you have other information about how to cite sources, I recommend you use the Purdue OWL at this website. And Diana Hacker, that Pocket Style Manual, is available electronically. And of course, there's always the ESC Online Writing Center. Does anyone else have any other source to recommend at this point? Smart Thinking is also good for your questions about citations. None of the Smart Thinking resources will correct it, but they'll point out problems and suggest you review certain citations. All right. Now there's some good tutorial videos that should be available here. If you want to go on the internet, and this is just an overview today, and they will give you some specifics about using MLA tutorials, or you can look for our APA tutorials. You can just Google MLA citations if you need to brush up on MLA. So I recommend that you make a search for that. Alexander Clarkson has provided these tutorials for his middle school students. So it's interesting to know that students are learning about academic integrity at that young age. And they won't need these reviews later when they get to college. Another fabulous resource is our library. And there's an information skills tutorial on that, or if you have any specific questions, chat with our librarian. I highly recommend this site. And for detailed questions, this is a good source. And although our librarian doesn't look like that, neither does our library website. They're very happy to hear from you. All right, now you're going to take a look at that. Library workshops are here. And you will see that there's plenty to choose from. Wonderful. Okay, there. All interactive and very specific details. Okay, now it's you must have questions. Have we confused you completely? What are some of your questions if you just type them out for us? While you're thinking about your questions, is anybody wondering about using Wikipedia? Okay, sometimes Wikipedia is a temptation. I think it's a good initial source. And Wikipedia, it gets its reliability by its links and by citing their sources. So it's very easy to use them as a beginning and maybe as a definition, but it's probably a good idea to stay away from it as a primary resource. If you know what primary resources are, it's not Wikipedia. But as I say, it's excellent for vocabulary and for general information, and the illustrations that they have, the pictures. Anybody else have any questions about that? And anything we need to review? What are your aha moments? Give us some ideas if you had any during this session. Any other slides you want to review or look at again? Yes, we all love that citation machine website. Yes, it's certainly a godsend now. I hope I haven't confused you completely on whether or not you should cite those sentences that we went through in the paragraph. As I say, generally, if you've used a source in the paragraph, cite it at the end of the paragraph. And if you've used two sources within that paragraph, obviously you'll have to identify which is which. But the point is I want to make about identifying the sources is if you have the same source for consecutive sentences, you don't have to put that citation at the end of each of those consecutive sessions. So I want to make that clear. As I say, if it's one source for that paragraph, just put the citation, and I'm talking about parentheses, or perhaps the parentheses at the end. And I interrupted myself there a little bit because it's okay to start off with an attribution to the author at the beginning, according to Smith, comma, and then you can paraphrase, or you can directly quote it if you use quotation marks. So just as long as the author of that information is there. Now, suppose you don't have the author's name. These manuals will tell you that the next thing that you need to list your source from is the name of the company or the website authorship, as close as you can get to the people responsible for that material, so that someone else who's interested in looking at that material can easily find it. I don't know if I mentioned it, but not all citations from web sources need to have the address. Check with your instructor to see if they require your web address. At the end of the source that's electronic, I do. I want to be able to take a look at it. Okay. People are interested in lists of resources at the end of articles, at the end of papers, in case they want to look at more opportunities. When I'm doing my own research, I often find a good article and will want to see what sources that author has used, and will go ahead and access them myself so that I can have the same original information that the author did. Yeah, the aha moment was the citation machine website, right? But you have to make sure that you know which format you're using, and you have to know, the specifics about the author and the volume and all the kinds of things you need to fill into the website. Oh, and let me reiterate: if you can't find any things on those little windows, it's okay. Oftentimes you won't have a page number for an internet electronic site, so you can't put it in if there is none. Okay. So remember, you can go to Smart Thinking, you can go to the ESC library, and you can check with your instructor. If you're at all confused about good sources, remember your CRAAP tests to evaluate the reliability and the validity of your sources. Look through sources with an eye toward a critical eye that will make you question whether or not it's properly reliable. If you don't have any further questions, thank you so much for spending the time here today, and I wish you the best of success in your college writing. Thank you. Bye-bye.